Right, apologies. I'm going to have to just voice over all of this. I forgot to take my camera to training yesterday, so I don't have fresh video of rail. So before we begin, you would have 10 minutes setup time. So in this time, you can put your sleepers out, you can put your rails out, line everything up. You can level your sleepers, make sure your rail's connecting into the base plate properly. So you can see as we get started, we've got paint marks everywhere basically. So that's marking where our rail is in relation to the sleepers, marking where our sleepers are in relation to the ground, and also we'll have put numbers on the sleepers to mark which sleeper's which. So that's something to do in your setup time as well. There'll be paint at comp on the day. Now you see us as we're coming in with the rail here, we'll stop for a moment. That's because if anyone tries to go over or under that rail while it's elevated, that's an immediate disqualification for your team. So you always have to let your teammates go around the rail. So here, Tommy remembers, get your gauge on as you're making your rail up, make sure it's spaced properly. So once your rail and sleepers are in place, your bolters start chucking those bolts through. Your setters will start setting your spikes. Apologies for blocked vision in this as well. But yeah, setting your spikes in, so getting them in tight enough so that when you come through with the spiking hammer, they don't get knocked out of the sleeper and go into it instead basically. It's up to you how you want to run this process. This is obviously just what we've done. But yep, Aiden's grabbed the spiking hammer. So super careful with the spiking hammer. If you're hitting the rail, it's going to be real loud, and you're also going to move the rail, which can disturb spikes that have already been set in. I think that's pretty much all there is to say about it. In terms of technique for spiking, definitely start small before going big. It's far more important that you make connection with the spike than if you do big swings and only hit every third hit. So Tommy, absolute machine on the spikes. Watch him go at it, dead in front of him, straight up and down, just knocking that spike in. We do allow you to follow around and do tap downs on the spikes as well. So there's no definitive rule for it, but pretty much don't take the piss. It's a millimetre or two. You can use a smaller hammer to finish that off, which you see Matt sort of running around and doing here. There he goes. So as that's being done, I've got all the bolts as tight as I can. And then pretty much run out of there. This was a perfect score on this one, no penalties, but we'll go through penalties in a second. Right, so close up of the bolts. When you're putting it through, your bolt will come from the inside of the rail, go through, and you'll put your nut on the outside. Your fish plates, when you look down them, you'll see these ridges. Now they go on the inside of the rail, so touching in there. So when you're putting it on, get your first fish plate on, bolts through. Apologies if there's any shoddy camera work. I'm just doing this one-handed, so I'm in struggle town. But there you go. Get your fish plates on. Like I said, nuts on the outside. Tighten them up. You would have your other rail connected in there as well, and you'd be putting 4 bolts in each side, but yeah, here by myself, so I don't want to set it up. And yeah, that's pretty much bolts. So just remembering, bolts go through from the inside, your nuts go on the outside, and those ridges on the fish plates are sandwiched against the rail. Okay, so once your setup is done, judges will pause time, they'll assess what penalties you have. Then you'll go again with your teardown. So you're using your camel toes to take the spikes out of the sleepers, bring your bolt box forwards, strip the bolts off, strip the fish plates off. Now everything needs to end up back behind the line that you start at. So it's a 10-second penalty for every piece of equipment left in front of that line. So that's a nut, bolt, fish plate, rails, sleepers, spikes, any of it. Every single bit of equipment adds a 10-second penalty. So be super careful with that one when you're doing your teardown particularly. Your foreman should be trying to watch for spikes that are not easy to see and trying to spot those for the people who can pick them up. When you're taking stuff behind the line, it can be very tempting to throw it. Do not throw it, because that will be a disqualification. The metric is basically a straight arm drop is okay. Anything more than that is disqualification. So yeah, again, same rule as before. You can't go over or under elevated rails. So you'll see Tom and I go around that rail. Disqualification again if you go over or under. So here I'll stand on that sleeper because he can't quite get it out. It just adds a bit of weight to the end to help your person on the camel toes out. The others behind us continue working away, pulling sleepers, pulling spikes back out. There we go with the hammer, trying to get that further under the spike. Just add a bit more leverage to it. That's pretty much tear down. Hopefully your spike doesn't get as stuck as this one. Keep in mind as well, if you leave any spikes in a sleeper, that is a penalty. So you do want to try get them out if you can. And yeah, just ripping all that equipment back out. And yeah, that's essentially what a teardown is comprised of. So when you're leveling the rail, there's two things you'll have to do. You'll either have to raise a sleeper or lower a sleeper. So what you do, two teammates, one on each end of the sleeper, two teammates, one on each rail. Those two teammates on the rail will lift it up. While that's happening, the two teammates here will raise or lower the sleeper. So if you're raising it, move the sleeper aside, brush some material on there, put it back, give it a little shimmy to make sure it's secure, then those two people can drop the rail, see if it's at the right height or not. If you're lowering it, you've got a few more options. So you can come around with a hammer, give it some big smacks in the middle or on whatever side you need to lower. If that's not working, you can also do the same thing. Raise the rail, pull the sleeper aside, brush material out, put it back on. So that's if you need to lower it a lot. If you only need to lower it a little bit, you can also just have a teammate on either end, shimmy it back and forth, and that will lower it a little bit more. So yeah, that's pretty much lowering the sleepers. I'll also bring your attention to the markup that we've got on the side of this sleeper. So we've got number one here, so that's sleeper one. I'll put a little diagram of how we number our sleepers, but yeah, you've got your number. You can see where the rail was sitting in the middle there. And when we're doing a markup, we would also mark on the ground around the boundaries of the sleeper, so that when we put it back before building it, when we bring it in to build, we know where we had the sleeper before, and yeah, that's how we mark our location. Right, so this is an approximate overhead view of what your track setup will look like. So green representing your fish plates, blue's your rail, red's your spikes, and then I've gone ahead and numbered those sleepers for you as well. So this just, numbering the sleepers just helps with your communications between foreman and whoever needs to be hitting things or taking things out. Very strongly encourage it, because it's not very helpful for a foreman to stand there and say, go to this sleeper, when they could instead go sleeper 3, spike needs to be hitting further. So that's just a bit of encouragement for that, and that's what an ideal rail setup would look like. Right, so another rough sketch, apologies for how poor it is. This is an approximate section view of what your spike would look like in a rail. So right here, this would be a penalty because that spike is not touching the rail. Basically, you need your spikes to touch the rail. If it's not touching, I think it's a 10-second penalty, but we'll go through the penalties in just a moment. But yeah, try get it in as straight as possible, because as is, you can get a camel toe under the back of that very easily. If you don't get it in straight and it's tilted into the wood, it can be very, very difficult to use your camel toe to get it out. So just something to be aware of. Right, so in terms of penalties, we'll go through the DQs first. So like I said before, travelling over or under an elevated rail, throwing tools or equipment, so keep in mind, straight arm drop, elevating constructed track, so that's if your spikes are still in your sleepers, you try and lift that rail. If those sleepers move with it, that's a DQ, and that's at the judge's discretion. Foreman handling equipment or tools, don't touch anything if you're the foreman, basically. Working on same tyres, double jack. So that's if you have two spikers or two people with camel toes working on the same sleeper at the same time. So basically keep that in mind. If you've got a spike, make sure you know where the other person with the spiking hammer is, so you don't do that, and same thing with the camel toe. Final one, PPE falls off a team member and team doesn't stop. So basically, if your PPE falls off, scream at your team, tell them to stop moving and get your PPE back on as soon as possible. So the remaining penalties will all be time penalties. So like I said before, any item left in front of the line is 10 seconds per item. If a spike's not driven in properly, so if you've got it elevated above the rail, that's 10 seconds per spike. If you don't use or attempt the spike, that's 30 seconds per spike. If your bolts are not tightened to required tightness, that's 15 seconds per bolt. So what that looks like is your judges will have a wrench, put it on the bolt, and it's a one finger push in the lefty-loosey direction. Not using spike or fish plates in the correct manner is 30 seconds per occurrence. So make sure you get your fish plates the right way. That's one of the easiest ways to make sure you don't get penalised. If a competitor lifts 2 rails without assistance, so that's in your setup phase. If they're elevating both rails by themselves, that's 30 seconds per occurrence. Hanging tyres means if the rail is separated from the sleeper and there's a gap between the sleeper and the rail, and that's, 20 seconds per tyre per rail. Gauge not properly aligned, 20 seconds. Just keep your gauge on as much as possible. Just make sure you bring it back behind the line when you're finished with your building of the rail, because otherwise there'll be a 10-second penalty. And finally, spike left in tyre after disassembly. It's 20 seconds of spike. So keep that in mind. Sometimes it's worth taking the penalty if you think it's going to take longer than 20 seconds to get a spike out. But yeah, that's up to your discretion and your foreman. So bringing your attention to the rail size differences. This was the same size rail as was used in Brisbane. I've got a nut for scale. So that's Brisbane rail, women's rail for this competition. It's quite a lot bigger, quite a lot heavier than men's rail, and co-ed rail is even bigger and heavier. So please be wary of that when you're competing. It's going to be heavy, so take care, use proper lifting technique. Yeah. So these are the results from Brisbane last year, women's, then men's, then co-eds, as you go down the page. Now keep in mind for co-eds teams, some of the rules are slightly different for you in terms of who can do what, so make sure you read that rule book very carefully. The long and the short of it is that you need to have a girl using the spiking hammer. I think that's pretty much it from me. This is by far the most involved and complex event, so have a team discussion before you get here. Make sure you have a clue what's going on. Try your best. It's a lot going on, and if you exceed the time limit, you will be penalised, basically. So yeah, best of luck with it. Stay safe, and yeah, have a good one.